Did you know that God had a specific reason for warning Adam and Eve about the tree of knowledge instead of just removing it? Stay tuned, because in this very chapter, God reveals a profound threat that most people overlook in the Bible. And that's not all. This same chapter uncovers the surprising reason why animals lost the ability to speak. In part 1, we uncovered the raw, heartbreaking journey Adam and Eve faced after being cast out of Eden. Overwhelmed by guilt, regret, and the harshness of life outside paradise, they found themselves in a world that felt entirely foreign, a land of suffering and survival. They mourned the life they'd lost, questioning if they could endure this new reality. But even in their despair, God's mercy never left them. He comforted them, offering a promise of hope and salvation amidst their pain. If you missed part 1, I'd highly recommend watching it before diving into part 2. You can find the link in the description box below. Okay, let's dive straight into part 2. Then, in His mercy and grace, God looked down and saw Adam and Eve lying weak and nearly lifeless in the water. He sent an angel to rescue them, gently carrying them to the shore as though they were dead. The angel then returned to God and said, "O God, your creations have drawn their last breath." In response, God sent His word to Adam and Eve, reviving them from the brink of death. Once Adam regained consciousness, he looked up and said, "O God, back in the garden, we didn't need or even think about water. But now, in this land, we can't live without it." God answered,
"While you lived under my command as a bright being, water wasn't a need for you. But now, after you've broken my command, your body needs water to cleanse itself and to survive, just as the animals do."
Hearing this, Adam and Eve wept bitterly, with Adam begging God to let him see the garden one more time. But God replied,
"I have made a promise to you, Adam. When the time comes and that promise is fulfilled, I will bring you and your righteous descendants back into the garden."
With that, God ended His conversation with Adam. Adam and Eve felt an intense thirst, and a burning sorrow overwhelmed them. Adam turned to Eve and said, "We shouldn't drink this water, even if it means we might die. If we let this water enter our bodies, it will only increase the suffering for us and for our children who come after us." So they stepped away from the water without drinking and returned to the cave of treasures. But once inside, Adam could no longer see Eve. He could only hear her movements, and she too could not see Adam, but could hear him nearby. Overcome with sadness, Adam began to weep, striking his chest in despair. He cried out, "Eve, where are you?" Eve answered, "I'm here, but I'm surrounded by this darkness." Adam replied, "Oh, remember the bright life we had in the garden, the glory that surrounded us. Remember the trees that shaded us as we walked among them." He continued, "Think back, Eve, to the garden where there was no night and no day, only light. Remember the tree of life with the water flowing from beneath it, casting its radiance over us. Remember that land of light and beauty. Now, in this cave, we're surrounded by darkness, unable even to see each other. All the joys of life have vanished for us here." Adam, overcome with grief, struck his chest and wept alongside Eve. They mourned through the entire night, feeling the night stretch long and heavy over them. In his sorrow, Adam threw himself onto the ground in the cave, exhausted and overwhelmed by the darkness, lying there as if lifeless. Eve heard him fall, and reaching out in the dark, she found him lying still, almost like a corpse. Afraid and speechless, she sat silently by him, terrified by the surrounding darkness. But the merciful Lord saw Adam lying as though dead and noticed Eve's silence, frozen in fear. So, He sent His word to them, reviving Adam from his near-death state and opening Eve's mouth so she could speak. Adam stood up in the cave and cried out, "Oh God, why has the light left us? Why has darkness overtaken us? Why do you let us suffer in this endless darkness? This darkness, Lord, where did it come from? It's so thick we can't even see each other. When we were in the garden, we didn't know what darkness was. I could always see Eve, and she could see me. Nothing separated us. We lived together in one radiant light. I saw her, and she saw me. But now, here in this cave, darkness has separated us. I can't see her, and she can't see me. O Lord, must we continue to suffer in this darkness? When God, who is merciful and compassionate, heard Adam's cry, he spoke to him.
Adam, when my good angel obeyed me, he lived in bright light with all his hosts. But when he broke my command, I took away his bright nature, and he became dark. When he was in the heavens, he knew nothing of darkness. But when he transgressed, I cast him down to earth, and darkness followed him. As for you, Adam, while you were in my garden and obeyed me, that same bright light rested on you. But when you disobeyed, I had to take that light away. Yet, in my mercy, I did not turn you into darkness. Instead, I gave you a body of flesh and covered it with skin, so it could withstand both cold and heat. If I had let my anger fully fall upon you, I would have destroyed you. But in my mercy I made you as you are. I drove you out of the garden, sent you to this land, and commanded you to dwell in this cave, where darkness now surrounds you, just as it did for the angel who fell. But, Adam, do not be deceived by this night. It will not last forever. It is only 12 hours long. When it ends, the daylight will return. Do not let your heart be troubled or think that this darkness is a punishment. Be strong and do not fear. This darkness is not meant to plague you. I created the day with the sun to give light so that you and your descendants could do your work. I knew you would sin and end up here, but I would not force you. I would not doom you for leaving the light and entering the darkness, nor for leaving the garden. I made you from the light, Adam, and I planned for you to bring forth children of light. But you could not keep my command even for a single day. I warned you about the tree because I knew Satan, who deceived himself, would also try to deceive you. I told you not to go near it, not to eat from it, not even to sit under it. Had I not spoken to you about the tree and given you a command, you might have blamed me for your fall. But I warned you, and you fell of your own choice. So the responsibility is yours alone. I created the day for you and your children to work and toil. I created the night for rest, so you could recover from your labors, and so that the beasts could go out and find their food. Now, Adam, there is only a little darkness left. Soon the daylight will return.
Pause. Do you want to read the Book of Giants? Or the Book of Adam and Eve? Maybe even the early life of Jesus? Lucky for you, we are launching a weekly newsletter packed with powerful stories from apocryphal texts. Plus, you'll get a Bible verse to pray over each week. Don't miss out on these hidden treasures of faith. Check the link in the description box to join. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Let's return to the video. Adam cried out to God, saying, "O Lord, please take my soul, so that I no longer have to see this darkness. Or, if possible, move me to a place where there is no darkness at all." But God gently replied,
Truly, I say to you, Adam, This darkness will pass. Each day that I have set for you will lead you closer to the fulfillment of my promise. In time, I will save you and bring you back to the garden, the place of light you long for, where there is no darkness. I will bring you there, in my heavenly kingdom.
Then God continued,
Adam, all this sorrow you are experiencing because of your choice will not free you from Satan's grip, nor will it save you. But I will. One day, I will come down from heaven and become flesh through your descendants. I will take upon myself the same weakness you feel now, the darkness that you face here in this cave. I will face it in the grave when I come in the flesh, born of your line. I, who am beyond time, will enter into time and live under days, months, and years, just as one of humanity, all to save you.
And with that, God ended his conversation with Adam. Adam and Eve wept with sorrow after hearing God's words. They were heartbroken that they would not be able to return to the garden until the appointed time. But their deepest sadness came from learning that God himself would one day suffer for their salvation. After this, Adam and Eve continued to stand in the cave, praying and weeping until morning arrived. When they saw the light return, their fear eased, and they felt a bit stronger in spirit. As Adam stepped out of the cave and looked to the east, he saw the sun rising with its glowing rays and felt its warmth on his body. Terrified, he thought this blazing light was sent to harm him. In fear, he cried out, beating his chest and falling to the ground, saying, "O Lord, please do not punish me. Do not destroy me, and don't take my life from the earth." Adam thought the sun might actually be God. While in the garden, he had only heard God's voice and felt his presence, but he had never seen the intense light of the sun, nor felt its heat on his skin. So when he felt the sun's burning rays, he feared it was a punishment that God intended for him to endure all his days. Adam wondered to himself, if God did not plague us with the darkness, then perhaps he has made this sun rise to plague us with burning heat instead. While Adam was caught up in these thoughts, God's word came to him, saying,
Arise, Adam, and stand up. This sun is not God. It was created to give light by day. Remember, I told you in the cave that the dawn would come, bringing light with it. I am the Lord who comforted you through the night.
And with those words, God ended his conversation with Adam. Then Adam and Eve stepped out of the cave and began moving toward the garden. As they approached the western gate, where Satan had once entered to deceive them, they saw the serpent, now cursed, slithering on the ground and sorrowfully licking the dust. Before the curse, this serpent had been the most honored among all animals, but now it had become slippery and the lowest of creatures, forced to crawl on its belly. Once the most beautiful of all creatures, it was now the ugliest, condemned to eat dust instead of the best food. No longer able to live in the finest places, it was now bound to the dirt. The serpent, which had once been admired by all animals, was now despised. In the past, it lived in a beautiful place where other animals gathered, sharing its water. But now, due to God's curse and its venomous nature, all creatures avoided it, fleeing from its presence and refusing to drink from its water. When the cursed serpent saw Adam and Eve, it raised its head, stood up on its tail, and glared at them with blood-red eyes, as if it intended to attack. The serpent lunged toward Eve, and Adam, who was nearby, watched helplessly. He had no stick or weapon to defend her and didn't know how to fight the creature. Driven by his love for Eve, Adam stepped forward and grabbed the serpent by its tail. The serpent turned and spoke to him, saying,
"O Adam, because of you and Eve, I am forced to crawl on my belly and slither like this."
Then, using its great strength, the serpent threw Adam and Eve to the ground, pressing down on them as if to crush them. But God sent an angel who pulled the serpent away from them, lifting Adam and Eve back to their feet. Then God's word spoke to the serpent, saying,
At first I made you agile and able to move on your belly, but I didn't take away your ability to speak. But now, because of your actions, first leading my creations to ruin and now trying to kill them, I am making you mute. You and your kind will no longer speak.
And with that, the serpent lost its ability to speak. Then, by God's command, a wind blew down from heaven, carrying the serpent away from Adam and Eve and cast it upon the seashore, where it landed far away in India. Adam and Eve wept before God, and Adam spoke to him, saying, "O Lord, when I was in the cave, I feared that the wild animals would rise up, attack me, and take my life from the earth." Remembering what had just happened, Adam beat his chest in despair and collapsed to the ground as if lifeless. Then God's word came to him, lifted him up, and said,
O Adam, none of these creatures will harm you. When I sent the animals and other living creatures to visit you in the cave, I kept the serpent away, knowing it would frighten you and make you tremble. I knew that the cursed serpent is wicked, so I didn't allow it to come near you with the others. Now be strong and don't be afraid. I'm with you until the end of the days I have appointed for you.
That is the end of part 2. Everyone stay tuned for part 3. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.